A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillah ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well, inshallah. So we're going to start in a minute or so. Okay, thank you, Faria, for sharing the screen. And we have Maryam Syed also with us, inshallah. So Maryam, I'll ask you, inshallah, after the opening prayer to, if you can read the section that Faria has posted, inshallah. So, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbana la tuzigh qulubana ba'da idh hadaytana wa hab lana min ladunka rahma innaka antal wahhab. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. All right, so we are reading from the 20th Flash on sincerity. So we've been having really wonderful discussions, I feel, on this topic, and it's a very relevant topic and very practical as well to our day-to-day life and activities. And just to remind everyone this how this flash started, basically the author shared the verses. I'm going to read that. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Verily, we send the book down to you in truth. So we send the book down to you in truth. So worship God in sincerity, for God's is sincerely practiced religion. Quran chapter 39, verse 2. So God's is the sincerely practiced religion. And this was also related to one of the sayings of the Prophet, upon whom be blessings and peace, which we spoke about extensively, that all men will perish except the scholars, and all scholars will perish except those who act in accordance with their knowledge, and all of them will perish except the sincere, and even the sincere are in great danger. So we were kind of looking into why the sincere are in great danger, which the author kind of is focusing on in his, first point, where he kind of laid out the question form, where he said, hey, what's going on, where sincerity kind of is an important topic that people of the students of the Quran need to be practicing in their dealings and how they are talking to each other, conveying the message. So he's saying that there's a one worldview which is just a worldly kind of view, where there seems to be no conflict, everybody is collaborating, everybody gets to do their job. But in terms of the ones who are really in the people of the religious scholars, or people of religion, or the ones who are seeking the truth, they kind of they should be the ones who should be in concord and should not have a problem. They should not be having rivalry amongst themselves. But apparently, because of some understandings of where they maybe the egoistic, personal, selfish kind of attitude that one may come with, can hinder that process of the concord and conveying the message in a proper, agreeable kind of manner. So, and then he started the author kind of started sharing his views with the different points. He's had the first, which we discussed, and the second cause. And we were kind of in the middle of the second cause, where we were reading the 9 commands. So just before I go into those 9 commands again, I just wanted to share a little bit of the first and second cause, what the author was sharing in terms of, he shared a little bit about the, some of the qualities that go along with sincerity, whereas, one should not be seeking attention from men. That's an important and very straightforward kind of rule, or that students of the Quran can take, that hey, if I'm seeking fame or attention, that I should have certain number of followers, and this, it boosts my my ego. So that's something that we should watch out for, that it doesn't turn on. I mean, theoretically, yeah, it seems very simple and it seems very straightforward. Yeah, I don't want to be in that category, but then there's still, we need to watch out ourselves that there might be a grain of ego that is present, and sometimes we get caught up in the way the whatever activities we might be doing, and it's something that we need to be more aware of, mindful of. And then he says, like the people of the ones who are working for religion and who are really sincere in their work, they are more focused towards their getting their reward from God. So, and then he shared that verse about, verily my reward is from God alone, which is Quran chapter 11 verse 29. And then there's another aspect also when you're conveying messages to or discussing with people. So there's another verse that was shared, that is that nothing is incumbent on the messenger but conveying the message. So we should not really look for the reward from people, and we should not expect them to just go with our idea immediately and just and feel bad, hey, if they're not really getting the idea or listening to us. So our duty is just to present the there's a mic open. Adam, would you want to comment on something?
So sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, my apologies.
Yeah, so if ones who is delivering the message that they're saying, it must be presented in a goodly kind of way, in a kind of way. And I should not expect or force somebody who is not really looking for the message to just, pester them with that message and just force it upon them. So those were some of the things. And another interesting point in the second cause was about, which we discussed, was about the, the genuine sincerity, even for the sake of evil, does yield the result. So whatever man seeks with sincerity, God will grant him that thing. So for example, a student who, is really studying hard will say, hey, they say, you're studying religiously, that's a term that they use, or that if you put your effort, your concentration, everything into it, then you are learning the lesson and you get the results according to the effort that you put in. So that is a sincere kind of effort you put in. Or another example is if you're going to the gym religiously, which is also if you're trying to work out on your physical body, for example, and then you are very sincere in that, you go every day pretty much to work out and do your exercises, then yes, you do get the results. So anything, no matter for whatever the reason it may be, whatever, if you follow the way the order is there, is laid out by the whoever lays out, by the source of existence who has laid out this order, then you do get the result that you're seeking. So, and another interesting aspect was how the author put it, just in the middle of the second cause, he was saying that those who are looking for their reward with God, they're not looking for, their dignity comes from their Lord, not from the other worldview, which is just the worldly view, and where everybody's kind of stuck in a competition and they're just beating them, in terms of, to go on top of each other. So they're okay with putting somebody down and just to get ahead of the other people. So this is a very kind of a corporate kind of work, environment, I would say, because I kind of experienced that very much in the way the civilization works and how the corporate culture kind of encourages. But the reward for the people, the students of the Quran, is mostly, it has to be with God. But the thing that the author is kind of pointing out again is that, just make sure that your obstinacy and egotism are not there. Like if they're there, then the discord and rivalry start taking place, and instead of concord and love. So that was pretty much the summary of the previous causes. And at any time, if anybody would like to add to it or make any comment, yes, feel free to raise your hand. And of course, I will also try to monitor the chat. So we were reading those 9 commands, more like a 9 commandments or something. And I think we went over the first and the third probably. So we can just read it quickly. So if Mariam Sayed, if you're available, can you just read those 9 commands for us? I mean, they're pretty straightforward, I think. And if you can read them slowly also, that would be great.
Okay.
So whatever the Furia highlighted, the text, if it's visible to you, you can start reading that, inshallah. So Mariam, are you on mute or? So basically from now, the only remedy for the critical consequences of this awesome state consists of 9 commands.
Okay, Assalamualaikum. To act positively, that is, out of love for one's own outlook, avoiding enmity for other outlooks, not criticizing them, interfering in their beliefs and sciences, or in any way concerning oneself with them.
To act positively, that is, to unite within the fold of Islam, irrespective of particular outlook, remembering those numerous ties of unity that evoke love, brotherhood, and concord. To adopt the just rule of conduct that the follower of any right outlook has the right to say, my outlook is true, or the best, but not that my outlook alone is true, or that my outlook alone is good, thus implying the falsity or repugnance of all other outlooks.
To consider that union with the people of truth is a cause of divine succour and the high dignity of religion. To realize that the individual resistance of the most powerful person against the attacks through its genius of the mighty collective force of the people of misguidance and falsehood, which arises from their solidarity, will inevitably be defeated, and through the unity of the people of truth to create a joint and collective force also, in order to preserve justice and right in the face of that fearsome collective force of misguidance. In order to preserve truth from the assaults of falsehood.
To abandon the self and its egoism and give up the mistaken concept of self-pride and cease from all significant feelings aroused by rivalry. If
If this ninefold rule is adhered to, sincerity will be preserved and its function perfectly performed.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for reading that. Beautiful. Now, so these are the 9 rules, as you said. Thank you for reading them again. And we touched upon the first and third last time, and there were some Quranic verses that were shared by Brother Ali, and we discussed, I think, a few of them. So maybe what we can do is we can go and look at a few other verses and try to understand, because all these rules that we read are actually taken from the principles of the Quran, how the Quran presents what sincerity is, and it always encourages everyone to always talk in a kind manner to whoever they're talking to, and to not start disputes or debates that are not worthy or not fruitful at all in their outcome. So there was another interesting aspect now that I recall. Last week's discussion was about making the distinction between the idea of a person and the person or herself, right? For example, let's say somebody has a bad habit of, let's say, smoking. That's a particular habit of the person. You don't like that habit of this person smoking, so you disagree with that particular habit of the person, but you cannot say I don't like this person, because that person is a created being also by the same Lord. You don't know later on this person will get rid of that habit of smoking. And so we have to make that distinction between the idea of a person and the person itself. So similarly, let's say somebody says, hey, I believe the from some another faith you might meet in your school, that hey, I am a Christian and I have this idea. So let's say I say that Jesus Christ is the Lord, for example, and the Son, or whatever the statement is. But you say, okay, you don't, you cannot say I don't like this person or this is, but you can just not agree with the idea. So that's an important distinction to make, that you can talk in a nice and kind way if they're willing to listen to, if they are wondering about it, that, hey, what is going on? But the important point is, yeah, you cannot create enmity out of a particular idea. If somebody has a particular idea, that doesn't mean they're an enemy to us. So just some thoughts that came to my mind, and I see a hand up from Fariha. Fariha, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So yeah, it was a very interesting topic, and I'm glad you mentioned this whole point we shared about idea versus ideology. Versus the individual. So, I have been thinking about it, like last week when we talked over it a little bit. It made very sense. I felt very enlightened. And throughout the week, I've been like really reflecting on it. And I was thinking, you know what? It's rough. It's challenging for me to separate the individual from the idea. It's a challenging thing to do, because how do I define myself? It's really with my idea. And I'm not talking about other identities in terms of, I'm a dancer, or I'm a sibling, or I'm a daughter, and so on. But I'm more thinking about in terms of my worldview. So yes, I'm a created being and I belong to a creator. That's an idea, and I define myself as such. So if I go on talking about that, this is how I maintain this idea, that's, this is how I define myself, that I'm a created being and I must have a creator, then I don't really see how am I separating this idea from me as the individual. Because yeah, I define myself as such. So I don't know. I was wondering on what are your take on this?
So anybody would like to share based on Faria's comments? Or should Faria, you want to rephrase your question?
Yeah, my question is, how do I really go on in this process of separating myself as an individual with the idea that I strongly believe in? So my idea is that, yes, I'm a created being, I must have a creator. So I'm defining myself as such. And I'm not defining myself with acquired identities, with identities such as my profession, career, status, or so on. That totally, I ripped it off. So now I'm defining myself with this idea of me being a created being and belonging to a creator of the universe. So how can I go on? So that's what makes me an individual. And so perhaps you may define yourself as a person that, hey, guess what? Mother Nature created me. So obviously, definitely, yes, that's an idea. And you're an individual, but I was just having a little hard time divorcing myself from the idea for myself. So individual versus idea. I don't know if that helped a little bit.
Yeah, that helps. So before I share my ideas, anybody else wants to share their ideas on how to go about this situation? So the individual is kind of understanding that they are created beings. So how about the universe and everybody else? So I would say they are also created beings. They are there. Now, if somebody shares this idea with me that they believe in Mother Nature as the source, so I say, okay, yeah, that's your understanding. That's fine. I mean, you can just proceed easily. And if they're willing to ask you more, like, why don't you agree with me and this, let's talk about it if in a friendly way. But if you see that there's an agenda behind it, there's a bias behind it, then it's best not to avoid that kind of conversation.
And see, that's my issue, because I define you with that idea now. And here we are saying that we need to separate the individual from the idea.
Right. So all these principles are to the individual itself, right? So I have to work on myself to make sure that, hey, not get caught up. So for example, this is one of the principles I think that the author highlighted. I was thinking in the ninth one where he says, cease from all insignificant feelings aroused by rivalry. So if there is a rivalry that is being sensed, with the ideology of somebody else, now how do we separate, the ideology from the individual?
Because the core essence of defining an individual is also with one's human nature, with one's reality, as far as one's createdness is concerned. Or maybe I'm just overthinking on things. So let me just. So we're saying that the idea is like a T-shirt you wear.
Yeah.
Okay, good. However, we're talking about belief matters here, and here the author is looks like he's strictly talking about in terms of what's true to my human nature. So if something is true to my human nature, it's not like a T-shirt that I'm acquiring, but that's who I am. Right. I'm a created being, and I must have a creator.
So the statements or the belief of someone doesn't, that's just their understanding. That's not, that person per se, the whole person. Right? Maybe they haven't thought about it, they haven't reasoned about it. So maybe there is a step-by-step process that is needed.
Okay, I see what you mean now. So at first glance, first step with an idea, it's like a T-shirt, you wear it. But then the T-shirt gets absorbed within you when things start making sense. Oh, cool. That makes sense. Thank you.
Sounds good. Perfect. And H. Beza has her hand up. So H. Beza, please take it away.
Assalamu alaikum. I don't know to what extent what I'll say will be controversial or to what extent I'll answer may add on to what's been said. But I think there may be 2 points that I want to kind of highlight. One being, like, my own understanding of myself is also not stagnant. So, and that's continuously changing and hopefully improving in a direction that I think is better for myself. So to say that I am defined by a fixed idea is not necessarily, I would say, for myself, is reflective of my experiential reality, would be one thing. And secondly, though, having said that, I think, like, what we've been discussing is, at least as far as I understand, the concept of sincerity, when it, in particular here, at least based on our conversations from last week, where, you know, when speaking to someone else as well. So as the third remedy or command says, to adopt a just rule of conduct, the follower of any right outlook has the right to say my outlook is nice or true or best, but not that my outlook alone is true, or that my outlook alone is good, thus implying the falsity or repugnance of all other outlooks. So, like, I hold a particular outlook because I think that it is true for myself, or that I think it is best for myself. And I think there's a reality in that, insofar as my conclusion for myself of my own reality is concerned. But to when speaking with someone else, to having that door open to new ideas, to new concepts, so that, you know, if there's some truth that I might see that someone else is saying, being open to adopting it, because in my discourse, I'm not just conversing for the sake of, as we were discussing last week, like, for the sake of debating or necessarily persuading the other person. You know, if the content of what I'm saying is true, then that itself should sell, for lack of a better word, whatever it is that is being said, as opposed to trying to win or compete or, you know, persuade the person of something, regardless of whatever it is that is being said. So I don't know if that helps at all or adds on to the discussion, but I just wanted to share those 2 things.
Yeah, thank you, Ashbeza, for adding that on. And do you want to continue on, or your hand is still up? Okay. So I also saw the hand of Mustafa and Yasmin. If they still want to go on, now's the time. If not, we can move to the verses.
No, I think you've all said it best. We can move to the verses.
Okay, alhamdulillah, thank you. So inshallah, let's go to the verses. And which one is this one? Okay, so this one is, yeah, the 141, 34, and 35, right? Okay, let me read it from here. So, and we did kind of touch upon the 34, 41, 34, and not equal are the good and the bad, evil. So repel evil by that deed which is better, and thereupon the one whom between you and him is enmity will become as though he was a devoted friend. And the next verse is, but none is granted it except those who are patient, and none is granted it except one having a great portion of good. So I think we just to revise a little bit about the 41, 34, where it was, you know, like repel evil with something that is better. So basically, I never know that the person with that particular idea, later on, he might accept that idea and he may become my, you know, a good friend of mine. So that's an interesting principle. I feel that, don't create animosity, but always, do things in a friendly, kind manner. So repel whatever the animosity with something that is better, something that is creating the goodness between everybody else. And thereupon the one, who you might have taken as enmity, and recall that the idea or ideology of someone does not make that person the enemy, right? It's just the ideology that I may not agree with. So you never know that the ideology of that individual can change, and that person can adopt that understanding, that ideology, and then can become a friend of mine. And the next verse, I think, but none is granted it except those who are patient. Patient in what? I think patient in this dispute, or in this this conversation that may be going on in the dialogue back and forth, or the debate that is going. So you have to be patient in that the conveying of the message, that don't like do it like in a very angrily kind of way. Hey, don't you understand? Like, just an example. For example, I've met some very smart individuals which know a lot of things, but then the presentation of their idea, since they assume that everybody is at their level, so there's a confusion that happens, that maybe, and if they don't, the other person does not understand, because it's not being conveyed at the level of the person, what their level is, what their needs are. So they kind of gets, it gets frustrating, and anger kind of comes in, that, hey, don't you get this? I'm trying to explain it to you. It's so simple. Wait, dude, but come on, can you give me the ABCs first before the language that you're using, I'm not understanding that particular language. So I've encountered that in my particular field I am in. That happens a lot. And same thing in the way when we are presenting our ideas, we have to be mindful of how, be patient in terms of, present it in a way that is palpable, is understandable to the individual at their level. So a level of, maybe a fifth grader will be different, whereas the level of, a college student will be different. So according to their level, that's how the idea needs to be presented. So that's how I feel that, the good portion of it is given by the Lord of existence.
I have a question. What do you think that it refers to? But none is granted it except those who are patient. What can the it refer to here? It meaning what?
So let's see.
And
but
none is granted it except one having a great proportion of good.
I think it referring to maybe the previous verse in terms of the not equal or good and evil, good deed. So the goodness in that deed.
Okay.
But that goodness is not there. There's no goodness that comes as a result of it. So the result of goodness being created, that's what I kind of understand.
Mhm.
But if anybody wants to kind of further elaborate on these verses or explain them further, I would be delighted to hear their opinions also. But from my understanding, this is what I kind of understood.
No, then we can move on to the next one.
So no hands up. So I guess everybody is satisfied. So if there's any question, comment, please feel free to do that. Yes, that's at least what I understood. And then of course, my reward again is not from the individuals. I should not seek that, but again, the reward must be, I have my relationship with my Lord. I have to keep that in mind. I mean, I should not be seeking that, but I should be aware that, hey, this is not my message. First of all, the idea does not belong to me. I've been given that idea as well. So again, going back to the original verse of sincerity, it says it's sincerely practice God's religion. So I have to practice sincerely what is God's religion. So the religion belongs to God. So the ideas, everything comes his giving. So the knowledge, the idea, the sharing, all the event that is presented to me is coming from him. It's a presentation. that comes from him. So anybody who would like to further talk on this verse? If not, we can move on to the next verse, I think, which was the next verse, 42:40. Great, there's a hand up. So Mustafa and Yasmin, please take it away.
Yes, I think that it is referring to a previous verse in the surah. It's if you go back a couple of verses. I mean, it's a lot to cover. I don't know if we have time to go through it all, but it does talk about, and for example, 41:32, verse 32, and as accommodation from a Lord who is merciful, forgiving and merciful. It may be referring to that as something that is granted, because it kind of fits in with what we were talking about in terms of sincerity being the only real savior of all of us, right? The first one you mentioned of the scholars who will be kind of persisted and saved in a way, and it really comes down to sincerity. And this verse is kind of, and the previous one was before it, are referring to that mercy and forgiveness based on the fact that there is sincerity and the behavior that kind of follows along with it. So I think it's referring to the previous verse.
Thank you, Mustafa, for your input. Anybody else who would like to say, just feel free to raise your hand, because we're trying to tie these verses also to the sincerity portion. So we're focusing on the sincerity part of these verses as well. So I'm sure there are multiple layers of meaning, but so we will look into how it ties to the subject that we are on. So what's the next verse? 42:40. So thank you for putting that up. So this one is, I'll read the English. And the retribution for an evil act is an evil one like it. But whatever pardons and makes reconciliation, his reward is due from Allah. Indeed, he does not like wrongdoers. Yeah, so the retribution for an evil act is an evil one. Like it? Okay, but whoever pardons and makes reconciliation. So let's focus on this part. Whoever pardons and makes reconciliation, his reward is due from Allah. And indeed, he does not like the wrongdoers. So whoever is creating mischief or animosity, that's not something that is preferred, but clearing things up and pardoning and reconciliation is highly encouraged from the Quran. And also how the author kind of points out in the principles that he writes, and we can go over some of them once we're, I think, review some of these verses first, because that will give us the foundations to understand the principles that the author has highlighted. So basically, I have to watch out not to further aggravate the situation, cause discordance, which may result in more evil. All the whole thinking that maybe I'm doing something good, but actually I may be causing more harm to the situation. So this false understanding, delusion of mind, can kind of create a more kind of dangerous kind of discordant scenario. So I need to watch myself. I need to clear myself, understand that my objective is just to present the message as clearly as possible in this situation that is there available. And I should really seek his guidance. The guidance is coming from him, and I should encourage peace in the conversation. And Brother Ali, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
I mean, you explained the part of the verse related to our subject, but I wanted to add that the first part of the verse, which says, the retribution for an evil act is an evil one, like it is something to do with the juridical system. It means the authority, the administration cannot forgive a person who transgressed the right of another person. That is something to do with the juridical practice in the society. That's why, for example, if someone steals my property, the judge doesn't say that, cannot use the second one, saying that, okay, I will pardon, I will forgive the thief. So this first part of the verse is something to do with court system, how the judge tries to establish the justice in the society. But the second part of the verse, which you discussed, but whoever pardons and makes reconciliation, it means Quran encourages us strongly that try to be forgiving, pardoning other people, not because of your possessions or material relationship or the property relationship or worldly matters, but in your understanding, and if there is a clash between another person's understanding, try to reconcile it. So do not really use the retribution, punishing the other one. For example, if someone attacks you or your ideology in a way, that you don't attack his ideology, because the Quran says, for example, if you swear on their God, be careful, don't do that, because they may swear on your God as well. It means there is no reconciliation, but instead you start competing with each other, rivaling with each other.
We lost your audio, rivaling with each other. And after that, your mic is muted, I think. Brother Ali, are you okay? We lost you when you were saying that.
If you transgress
That part.
your limits, you will be a wrongdoer. So it means, for example, if a person does not agree with you as far as your ideas are concerned, if you just attack them or harass them or insult them, it will be a wrongdoing. It will be an act of wrongdoing. So the Quran says God doesn't like it. It means the Quran altogether encourages the individuals to look for any means of reconciliation. That's what the importance of the verse is, the verse as related to our subject.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Ali. So that kind of makes the whole case of debating, like those interreligious debates that go on, into a problem, right? Because mostly what happens is, I think Sohail described that last time. He was, most of the debates that go on, they start, hating each other, and it becomes really ugly kind of situation. So that is what, as long as there's no constructive or peaceful dialogue, I think we have to be really careful and not to, go back and start attacking the ideologies, as I think Brother Ali kind of was hinting at. Anybody would like to add anything to this or clarify something for us? All right, so Thank you, Brother Ali. So we'll go on to, I guess, the next verse, which is what, 134. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Who spent in the cause of Allah during ease and hardship, and who restrain anger, and who pardon the people. And Allah loves the doers of good. So I feel this is very kind of similar to how what Brother Ali kind of shared right now about, restraining anger is, yeah, that's something that, especially in matters of, truth or belief, it doesn't take anyone anywhere if there is anger that is present. So I have to hold in check the anger, enmity, dispute, no matter what situation I'm in. And again, pardon, making, forgiving people and making peace with fellow men is the way to go. And of course, as much as peace is encouraged, that's what the loves, that is what the goodness is. So God loves the doers of good, so not creating animosity that results in just a hatred outlook for each other's viewpoint and for each other, but something that is more engaging and, with kindness and love is how we should go. Anybody wants to comment on this verse, please? You can raise your hand. Brother Ali, please take it away.
Earlier on, Hamim asked, Feriha asked, I think it was Feriha, asked the question, how can I separate the person from the ideology? So we understand that all these verses, there are many verses in the Quran, the summary of which we are reading in the text that we read. All the advices of the verses in the Quran are summarized here in the text we read. But we are going back to the origin in order to understand that this is not the author's personal ideas. Of course, when it comes to the practice, it is not very easy because we human beings, I am a weak person. So how can I really pardon the people if I don't agree with their ideas? So we have to make the separation between my behavior in my social life and my attachment to my ideas. It doesn't mean that I have to say to everyone, you are right as well, you are right as well. This is not reconciliation. We have to be careful. I cannot tell a lie to a person who defends a wrong idea and say that, oh, this is also right, that is good for you. No, it is not good for him. But it doesn't mean that I should attack. Even they attack me, I shouldn't attack back. I should always prefer the way of reconciliation, pardoning, forgiving, but having a positive relationship, but never turning the conflict ideologies or the conflict between the understandings, belief system, ideology, whatever, between different religions. I should never turn these differences into religious competition, ideological competition. I have to behave as in the society as an understanding, pardoning person, but never attacking, insulting, blaming the people because of their ideologies. We have to make the separation. Kindly disagree with the ideology, but respectfully behavior to the person. We have to make the distinction. It is not difficult at all, but of course, I am a weak person. I may confuse between the mistakes of the people or mistaken ideologies, religious or otherwise ideologies, and to make the distinction between mistaken ideologies, according to me, and my behavior towards the person. I can still be respectful towards the person. That is also very frequently presented and implemented in the life of the Prophet. Prophet never insulted any person individually, but the Quran uses very severe language, criticizing the wrong ideologies without aiming at any person or at a very particular people. We have to be very careful when we are reading the Quran. For example, when the Quran addresses the children of Israel, the unbelievers, the deniers, all the munafiqun, the hypocrites, we have to understand that we cannot make these language and say that this language is spoken or said in case of this particular people. We cannot name it. We cannot name the tribe. We cannot name the person. We cannot name the group of people. But unfortunately, classically, this children of Israel is used for those people who are called Jewish people and those people who follow Judaism. But we don't know whether these people really fit into this criticism or not. But the idea is out there. Behavior, criticized behavior is in the Quran. So I must add the criticized behavior, which I must be careful about as well, because Quran speaks to the believers, first of all. So if I say that I will follow what the Quran says children of Israel behaved in this way. What does it mean? You shouldn't behave in that way. Rather than blaming certain group of people, I have to take the advice on myself as an repelling me from behaving in the same way. So these are some critical principles while we are reading the Quran. When we read the Quran, we should not externalize it. We should not interpret it in terms of certain group of people existed during the life of the Prophet. We should not externalize it. We should let the Quran speak to me, not right now, within my own life conditions. And I have to say, look, when the Quran speaks, criticizes the unbelievers, it means I should not behave in this way. I should not think in this way, because Quran is now speaking to me. Some points came to my mind and I wanted to share it with you. So it is difficult to make the distinction between the person or people or the group of people and their ideologies, their religious tradition. But we have to try, we have to learn to make the distinction.
Beautiful, Brother Ali. Thank you. So you highlighted a very important point, mashallah, about the principles of how we should read the Quran also. And people of Noah, people of Lut, or children of Israel, every time we kind of read them, we need to keep this in mind, the principle of what their ideology is and relate it to our life, our conditions here and now. It's very easy to get lost when you read the commentaries or the some interpretations where they start going into some aspect historically, and then it kind of takes you away from that separation of the ideology and going into the group of the individuals. But the Quran's method is always focusing on the ideology. I mean, that was beautiful. And also, as you said, this is theoretically, it makes perfect sense to me and everyone, I'm pretty sure. But the real challenge, of course, is we have to keep this with us practically when we are engaging, with other people, when we are reading the Quran, in all our discussions. This is an important point to separate out the ideology with the individual, and always, talk in terms of the ideology. And I think that's what we kind of do in terms of talking in terms of the ideology. But I think it's good to, again, make it clear, clarify it out on how we do it. So there is a hand up, and I saw another hand up. So Faria, go first, and then Sarah can go after you.
Okay. It's very clear, and I think everybody mentioned that, and we all know it also, when we're having any sort of conversation with anyone, discussion or exchange of ideas, the whole conversational etiquettes, right? Even like you're mentioning, in the corporate world, anywhere. People respect each other. We communicate or exchange ideas in a respectful way. However, I think, at least for me, what I understand, the Quranic teaching and what the author has been pointing in terms of even the prophetic teaching is making sure that within myself, I'm not claiming ownership or anything. And, last week we also talked about how when somebody said, is the goal an agreement, or is it a way to call people to the truth? Definitely here it's not an agreement anymore, but it's a way up to call people to the truth. But I was wondering, and because when we're talking about the speech of the creator of the universe, so even when I read that, I interpret something about it, and that becomes my idea as well. And so I'm just exchanging that idea with you. So
you're exchanging your understanding of the idea with me, right?
So I'll be very much inclined to taking ownership of this idea, because it's an understanding, my understanding, but then questioning also this whole existence of the understanding that I don't own it. Because even if we keep in mind.
So I use my reasoning, I use my experience to understand, because I have to, when I read a verse, when I try to understand, I have to use some reasoning there. I have to research it, verify it, look at it. Do I experience that in the universe out there? So all these abilities, somebody has given me those abilities. My existence is given to me. My ability to reason is given to me. My ability to read, write, talk, all these are given to me.
Okay.
So the thoughts in my head, I did not give existence to those thoughts, but somebody has given or imparted those thoughts to me.
So pretty much even the understanding or the idea that I'm sharing is not mine. I cannot claim ownership over it. It's just, I'm just sharing it in as a way to call people to the truth, or as a way to convey the speech of the creator.
That's interesting, yeah. So you're saying that it becomes your idea for that moment of reflection.
Yes, and I'll be more inclined.
So it has come to you. And it makes sense to you. So if it makes sense to you, then I don't know how to proceed, because it makes sense. But maybe, I have to learn to be open to explore, hey, maybe there's something more to this understanding that I have. And that may be an opening for me to kind of get to another understanding. Oh, so this is how, let's say, somebody presents or talks about a matter in a different kind of area, I say, oh, this aspect, I never thought of it that way. But that also makes sense. I can run that through my feelings, my senses, and my verification also, and say, yeah, that can kind of take on that idea also. That makes sense. What do you think?
I was, I don't know, just off my
That's fine. You can talk about it. So if anybody else wants to comment on that, feel free to do that. And also, I saw Sarah, you want to go ahead, please?
Mashallah, I just happened to come across this. I'm so grateful for this halaqah. What came to my mind, first of all, beautiful sharing of verses. I'm so grateful to see these verses back to back with such a very strong message behind them. I think it's, from experience, easier to not take an ideology personally when people are discussing ideas or in the professional world, or people are just working, and perhaps it just seems like it's easier to take things more personal when someone is perceived as being attacked when it's a personal relationship. And so my initial question was going to be, but how does this apply when someone, wrongs you or says something to you in a, different, like a personal relationship that's not just professional, or people just discussing different ideologies or belief systems? Because it seems like it's a bit more challenging, because then, like Fariha was saying, it's harder to separate yourself from the feelings that you get, and also, the other person. But I remembered something that came to my mind with these verses, that these verses are really calling us to transcend or elevate beyond the horizontal relationship with people. And I love the other verse that said something about a meeting. Like I don't remember exactly the Arabic word, but it was something. Here it is. Yeah. وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا, like something about no one will meet this. And it just reminded me of the previous verse that says ahsan. So it's like this meeting with that which is best or most beautiful is only possible when we're patient, meaning able to really look for and see or elevate beyond the horizontal relationship and connect to the vertical one, that the Quran is urging us so strongly to see. And then back to the current verse that you had up, to pardon the people. What came to my mind, mashallah, was something that Dr. Ali shared a long time ago, that the Quran, different than other belief systems, offers this idea that evil is external to you. Evil is external to the human being. And when that came to my mind, I can see how we shouldn't take things personal, because it's not actually a personal problem, like between two people, but there's this external, the Quran externalizes the source of evil, and then tells us also to connect vertically to this being that's beyond, to sort of pull us out of the horizontal, personal dimension.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for sharing your comments and about the practical question or concern. And yes, that's what I think we need to keep in mind, that the ideology, and as you said about even the external false ideas, I remember, that is something also, that the false is false. They don't exist. There's a difference between the truth and falsehood. Truth is what is real, and falsehood is not real. And I see Brother Ali's hand up, so please go ahead, Brother Ali.
Yeah, I totally agree with what is said, what has been said, not only by Sarah, but also Feriha. It is difficult. It is difficult to control one's feelings. That is why the verse in the screen now, we have to memorize this piece of the word. Really, it is extremely important. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ كَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ. Now, very important, it is translated as restrain their anger, boiling inside. Look, these unbelievers. So, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ, we should restrain our anger, وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, and we try to pardon people. Yeah, but at the same time, we know that we have to deliver the message that we believe, which is true. Because if we think that this way of understanding life, this way of understanding our being in this world is relaxing, helping me, curing my problems, healing my anxieties, then why should I not share this beautiful benefit for my well-being with those people who need it? Yes, we have to. If you know that a medicine is a cure for you, why not to offer other people who are suffering from the same illness? That is correct. But what is known, especially among the Muslims, a hadith relationship, hadith narration, if you see anything wrong, you have to correct it with your hand. If you don't have the power to do that, you have to correct it with your tongue. If you cannot also speak because of the environment conditions, you have to disagree, reject it by your heart. There are many, as far as my understanding is concerned, although it is not directly related to our subject, but really a side of our subject looks to this matter. In my understanding, personal understanding, I'm not making it a general statement. There are many hadith narrations which are misunderstood, which are not understood within the definition of the messengership. It is understood within my own understanding. Yeah, it means according to my own feelings, I interpret the verses. For example, verses and especially hadith narrations. For example, if I see anything wrong, I have to correct it with my hand. Yeah. Okay, my wife is doing something wrong. Shall I just pull her back? And then disaster happens. You know what will happen at the end. Yeah? So it is not correct understanding of the hadith. If you have the power, it means you are in the power. It means you are an administrator. You are a judge authorized to pass the judgment in a court. Then you have to apply it, apply the power to implement the justice, because you have the power to do it, because you are in the position of power, implementing the authority of the state, administration. You shouldn't stand behind saying that, oh, I don't know, I have to forgive these people. No, you have to implement the requirements of the law. That is your power. You have to use it. But am I in the power as an individual in the society? No. Can I implement the physical penalties? They call it hudud in Arabic. Physical penalties as an individual, according to my understanding? I am not in the power of passing a judgment. No, this part of hadith narration does not apply to me. But it may apply to me if I am in the position of speaking. But the Quran says, how many times reminds the prophets, if they don't listen to you, don't bother. Your responsibility to deliver the message to those people who have ears, who can listen to. It means if someone is ready to listen to you, then you are in the position to speak to him. But if someone doesn't present himself as a listener, as a person who asks you about this subject, what do you say? Then you have to speak, because he is asking you to pass your ideas to him. But if a person is not ready to listen to you, you cannot go and next to him and shout into his ears. Of course, in other requirements of the verses says, if they don't listen to you, don't bother. Yeah. Lesta alaykum bimusaytir. You don't have to you don't have to convince them. And also, do you want, as the Quran warns the reader, do you want to make people by compensation, by coherence, to believe in your message? No. The Quran says, no, your duty is only to pass the message to those people who listen. And if you are in a general public, if you are making a video recording, for example, and putting on YouTube, you put it, those people who want to listen, they will listen to you. But you cannot force people to listen to you if they don't want to listen to it. But unfortunately, again, we think that we are authorized because of this hadith narration that I have to speak to them if I cannot have the power to put them down. This is a very misunderstood hadith. Now, the last part of the hadith is related to every individual. If you see anything wrong, if you are not in the power position, if you are not a judge or administrator responsible to implement the law, and if the person doesn't listen to you, at least you have to have in your heart the disagreement, the sense of disagreement. But it should never turn into a hatred, anger. That's why وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ comes into there. You don't agree with them, but it doesn't mean that you hate the person. Yes, you disagree with the idea, but you can still be having a humanly civilized relationship with the person so that he may listen to you. The previous verses that we studied refer to this matter. You don't know. They may become a very close friend of yours. They may embrace the truth later on. So we have to take all the verses together and follow the principle of the Quran, which is the Quran interprets itself. We cannot take one verse and ignore the other verse. That's why every part of the Quran must be understood. Every verse of the Quran or every phrase of the Quran must be understood within the context of the whole teachings of the Quran. This is the most important principle in reading the Quran. No part of the Quran cannot be interpreted without taking into consideration of the whole teaching of the Quran. Whole teaching must be in our mind. That's why we have to be patient to study the Quran, to get the general structure of the teaching of the Quran, and then try to understand or interpret the individual verses alone within the understood, perceived teachings of the Quran in general. Well, Kadhimin al-Ghaidha, for example, cannot be applied in the hot battlefield. In the hot battlefield, the enemy is attacking you to kill you. You say, okay, I have to keep my anger down. Yeah, of course, accordingly. As much as this person tries to kill you, you have to defend yourself. But this verse cannot be applied to the battlefield. But at the same time, any verse which sets some rules and principles how to act in terms of the battlefield cannot be applied in a civil life. We have to understand the purpose of the Quran and accordingly apply it into the practical, our practical life. It is an, big problem, but at the same time, we have to just deal with one or two examples only in order to give a clue about the importance of studying the Quran and which kind of principles we have to follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Ali. So I like the way you tied, the explanation of that hadith from the Prophet ﷺ about, with the, paraphrasing it, when you see evil, just, either if you have the ability to, get rid of it, or from your by action or words, or if not from your heart. And I like the way you related it to the principles of the Quran and the verses that we're studying, and that made perfect sense to me. How beautifully the Quran's principles are applicable, and how the prophetic teachings are also how they relate to the actual principles of the Quran. And in terms of our day-to-day dealings, as you gave an example of a spousal relationship, what happens if you physically act or by words, and that's also same place in your work environment, or in your, with your family, or with your parents, your siblings. So we really need to keep this in our practice, how these principles are very valuable, alhamdulillah, that we need to really think about more and really work on ourselves. It's really us, really our education. We read the Quran, the scriptures, the hadith, all for our help, our education, the way we need to, change our attitudes and really benefit. There's a hand up from Maryam and Rayan. Please go ahead.
So, Assalamu alaikum. So, I wanted to share my notes about the verse. The verse was, and the retribution for an evil act is an evil one like it, but whoever pardons and makes reconciliation, his reward is due from God. Indeed, he doesn't like wrongdoers. So that was a verse that I took away, and I'm gonna share my notes on what I took from that. So took my note of whoever follows the evil path will get a severe punishment. As for the followers of God, they will get a reward. Second note, for the past few days I have been reflecting on God's path and the evil path. I have noticed the evil path is more convincing than God's path because the evil path is more easy to follow. And then my other note is the evil path is like more convincing than God's path, but then to make God's path more easier to follow than challenging is you should think of what has been given to you from God and what you will be rewarded with. When you are on the evil path, you will get a severe punishment. Think about your consequences.
Thank you, Mariam. Beautiful for sharing those notes. I have a question also for you. I didn't understand how you would say that the evil path is easy to follow. Would you like to share that also? I know you're still reflecting perhaps, but if you would like, please go ahead.
So I think of the evil path being more convincing is because like it's easier to follow, and meaning like when you so it's like you're watching a show, for example, and it's like time to pray, but then you will just want to like continue watching whatever you're watching and not pray even though it's like time. So meaning like it's the evil path is more convincing because it's something you want to do than the other thing, because you have to like practice for praying, and you're convinced in like continuing your show.
Thank you, Mariam. That was very beautiful. Your example kind of helped me clarify it. Thank you so much. Inshallah. Anybody wants to comment also or add anything?
Yeah, it's interesting, Mariam, that you brought this up. It seems that it's an easy path. It seems to be like a lazy path where I'm not really doing much, where I'm just like going with the flow. I'm not doing my homework, just attending class, and that's about it. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's cute.
So another example is like, although I'm a student in school, but if I don't really, do my assignments instead, I just keep watching TV or start playing video games and just do, what is rough kind of schoolwork, then, that's the outcome. I can get that outcome. I would know, it's easier to just not study because study takes time. I guess that's the kind of example that Mariam and Faria are kind of relating to. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else who would like to comment? Yeah, Brother Ali, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Mariam made me laugh. Yes, practically not to study, as mentioned before, is easy. Study needs some effort, but human beings, we have to pay attention to the result of our choices. For example, when I don't study, when I don't learn, if I remain ignorant, not learned anything, do you think it is easier to bear and makes me feel happy? Or when I learned and when I practice what I learned, which one is easier for me to bear and which one makes me happy? Mariam, can you answer this question? If you are successful and got a good degree, or you fail, which one is easy to bear? Which one makes you much happy?
Mariam, go ahead if you would like to answer. If you
Yes, sorry. So like um something that make me like more happy, and that is if I successfully like study and practice it and get like a good grade. And yeah.
Yep, that is what the human feeling, human side, Brother Ali is referring to. Brother Ali, would you like to continue the conversation?
No, I think that is enough. We have to know that, for example, not praying, not thinking, what am I doing in this world, looks like easy. But for our human side, these attitudes, for example, living in a meaningless life, purposeless life, not having values for your life, for example, getting to know your creator and attributing yourself to him and presenting all your needs to him and making sure that he will treat you with his absolute infinite mercy in the course of your existence. For example, not being becoming aware that death is not the end of your being, your existence. Death is a transfer and a means of transfer into another type of life that you can practice, which kind of relationship, which kind of cognizance we have to develop of our creator. Then I will know that I know my creator is an absolutely merciful one, forgiving one, just one, and I am seeking his mercy for my future, and I am seeking his forgiveness for my faults, for my mistakes. And he is, of course, merciful, being aware that his mercy will come to you. Living in this world makes your life so beautiful, sweet, and worth living. Whereas if you say, I am not going to care about the future of my life, I'll just enjoy my day, but your human side will suffer so much that you will never, ever have an happiness. You will never be happy with your life because your human side never forgets the end of your life, the purpose of your life. No one does anything with no purpose at all. How can we live without any purpose? Of course, we have to investigate in order to understand, realize what the purpose of our life should be. So as a result of this investigation, if we understand the purpose of life goes into an eternal, infinite happiness, then my life will become much, much pleasant, source of pleasant for me to live. So I will be always exuberant, happy, and I love my life, and I love everything around me because they are all presents, gifts from my creator. Of course, this is for human spirit, for human side, is much more pleasurable, enjoyable, and makes me feel happy. Otherwise, the type of life, opposite type of life, is not easy to bear. Although physically, it seems to be very easy not to think. Don't bother, it's easy. But the result is much, much heavier to carry. I mean, impossible to carry. So people, that's why they get despaired, they get, they go into depressions, they feel lonely, they feel worthless, good for nothing. they feel really completely lost in their being and hopeless. That's why all the problems, human psychological problems, comes from meaninglessness. The reason is we did not think about it. We did not search for it, for the answer. So doing nothing at all seems to be easy. But what the bill for this laziness is unbearable for human beings. We have to make the distinction in between. Thank you.
Beautiful, wonderful comment between Mariam and Brother Ali. Thank you so much for that, enlightening us on that. I think we are at time right now, inshallah, for today's discussion.
Where do we continue next?
So I think there are a few more verses we can go over. And just to get, I thought we will be able to do all the verses, but mashallah, there were so many beautiful points that were shared that we could not finish that. So I think we will continue with the verse probably 24, 22, and then the additional ones, Faria, you have. Yeah. And then we can wrap up maybe the second cause. And what Brother Lee shared also about that, that bodily temporary pleasure versus, the human side, the spirit pleasure that is really the one that needs the satisfaction. Yeah, temporary wise, for the time being, immediate pleasure, it seems easy, but the thing is that the consequences are unbearable. That's what, they are more of a heavy burden on the human being. So that's why, it was a really good, enlightening kind of conversation for me. Thank you, everyone. If there's any final comment by anyone, now's the time before we close, or any. Okay, perfect. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma alamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Wa akhiru da'wahum alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Al-Fatiha.